Hi, this is Bai Macfarlane with Mary's Advocates, upholding true marriage. And I've got with me today LeeAnne Abel, whose website is Rightly Ordered. And LeeAnne, I heard she was doing a survey of separated faithful spouses. So I asked her if she would join me on video so we could invite all the separated faithful that I'm connected with Mary's Advocates, to seriously consider spending the time it's going to take to give her information. So I'll let her explain why, because I think this is a really good idea. Thanks, LeeAnne.
Well, wonderful to be here. I have been for years working with people who are struggling in their marriages. And I also have quite a few priests that come to me and say, I have this issue, can you handle this? And sometimes I wish that they had done some things in the background to find out more about various issues that happen with divorce, with the breakup of the family, with what's going to happen to an abandoned spouse. And this information just really isn't available. And these are wonderful priests who do so many things right. And they're faithful to the magisterium in so many areas, and obviously they serve us beautifully, but they don't know what they don't know. And to be honest, I don't know what I don't know. I'm not a stander. I know quite a few standers. And these are the separated faithful who have a desire to live out their vows, but they are, for various reasons, doing this without their spouses alongside. And, you know, I'm an adult child of divorce, and I work with a lot of adult children of divorce. I speak for different organizations on that and advocate for adult children of divorce. And I know that there are certain voices that aren't heard. And when you don't know something, you don't know. So in an effort to provide some information in a more streamlined way, I have my website, which is for various people looking for some type of mentoring or coaching. And I have that available, and people come to me through that. But I would like to provide some information for priests who constantly need different things to help work with people having problems in marriage. And one area that I'm not going to say it's a blind spot of mine, because it's not a blind spot, but like I said, I don't know what I don't know. I haven't lived the experience. There's a need for priests to understand what happens when people approach their priests and they don't receive much help, or they receive maybe you can get an omen because the priest just doesn't know what to do. And this is, often happened where they call me and say, I don't know what to do, because they're not marriage counselors. And so they're really unsure what they can do that maybe a counselor wouldn't do that would be really helpful. And for them to understand that, I think they just need a deep conviction of all of the issues around family, the whole timeline of a family. What kind of issues happen in a marriage in different times of life, and why do people take these exit ramps? Of course, I work with adult children of divorce. So they have all kinds of built-in exit ramps. This is falling apart, I'm out of here, right? There are ways that you can work with that, and you can learn to be okay in your marriage, and you can heal your marriage. And so what happens on the other side of these marriage problems is a family that it's like a bomb goes off. And it's the adult children of divorce, and we call it the gift that keeps on giving. And I'm sure standards would.
We call it that too.
Do you? Yeah,
yes,
because it's not like
you're the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, you're 75 years old. You're not done. You're an adult child of divorce. You're not done. You have parents, maybe elderly parents, to take care of. You have people who are just figuring out for the first time why life is so difficult, because the foundation of the family fell apart. And so working with them has given me some insight, and I know that I don't have all of the insight regarding standers and people who have experienced this themselves. They have gone in and tried to get help from their priests. Now, when I speak with people who are having problems in their marriages, they will tell me various things, enough for me to know this is a problem. And I would like to know more. And I think priests would like to know what was helpful that a priest has done with people who are in this position. What is not helpful? What did we think maybe was a way to handle it sort of socially And by that, I mean, we're sitting in an office together and somebody is devastated and they're trying to interact with that person. What is helpful and what is not helpful? I can tell you a lot of things that are not helpful for adult children of divorce. And whenever people say them, it makes us a little bit ragey. That's not helpful. That makes me realize I'm not allowed to say what I'm actually thinking or feeling. That was a mute button. And then we all get together and we can talk to one another and say, this is actually how I wish I could have responded. And I'm sure the same thing is happening with people who are still standing for their vows. They're still married and they might be civilly divorced, and watching things happen afterwards as there's remarriage, there's annulment, there are all these other things that are happening, and they have not been able to really say what's going on. So in order to provide that information, I put together a questionnaire and I asked a lot of people to provide different types of questions to make sure that we're sussing everything out. So it's a little bit long. So if you ask the people that you know who are standers to fill it out, it's going to take a little bit to sit down and fill it out. Although not every question will apply to everyone. So it might look worse than it is. So yeah, that's the idea, to understand what did they go through.
When I looked at your questions and I heard what you were asking separated faithful to do, what it kind of struck me as is, if we, best case scenario, a number of priests will see whatever you put together. So if we as separated faithful have had our spouse talk to a priest and relay to us what the priest said, or we ourselves have talked to a priest and we relay, like you said, when you said the mute button, I think what you mean by that is when, whether it be a priest or anybody, they say these, they're almost cliches. It's like the thing that you might say to the person who's been through a divorce. But when we hear that, we're like, you don't get it. And we don't, like you said, when you say mute, you mean we don't want to talk anymore. We're like, we're not being heard. We're not being understood. We're almost like backing away. Is that what you mean by mute button?
There are certain topics that come up. I can only speak for adult children of divorce, which is why I need the information from standers. Okay. So for adult children of divorce, people will say, well, these are the worst ones. You get 2 Christmases. You get a bonus mom. Your parents are happier. Children are resilient. I could really go on for a long time with these things. And they're trying to handle all of these negative emotions, but you can't fix it that way. Why don't you just tell me that an injustice was done to me? Why don't you tell me it shouldn't have been like this? Why don't you tell me the shape of the family and the function of the family is something designed by God, and every degree that you go away from it, you're going to have suffering. So the suffering that you feel is real. Why don't you tell me that? Not that, oh, well, your parents were always arguing. You don't want to grow up in that. Oh, no, I'll take that. I'll take that. Thank you very much for telling me what would be better for me. So there are lots of things. See, I'm starting to get a little, and I'm sure there are the same types of things that are said to people. Well, sometimes it doesn't work out, or I don't know what you guys hear, but
like I'm thinking of, and one of them is, well, it sounds like you're still holding on to your anger.
Yes.
And it's like, well, anger might be the proper response to an injustice.
Right.
So
right.
When you tell somebody, well, you're still holding on to your anger, if you're angry, it's like, well, we need to go on about that. So that's kind of a shutdown.
So the
or you were already emotionally divorced anyway. Or I'm thinking about it. Why would you want to stay married to someone that doesn't want to be married to you? Like that, those are the kinds of things. So,
and this is what people tell me when they go and speak with their priest. Not all of them. Some of them have wonderful things to say about how the priests have helped them. I had a particular experience. I went to Mass at a parish I don't usually go to. And there was a deacon and he was speaking. And he said, well, this man came in and he was telling me what was going on with him. And he's been separated and they're divorced. It's been 2 years now, and he's still holding on to the past. And I turned to my husband right then and I said, we will never step foot in this parish again. I was so angry. I've gone back since because it's closer to me than the one that I'm actually remembering. But anyway, the point is that was wow, how many people hear these things? And, he probably figured he was, I don't know what, trying to help this man build his life back up again. But what's the reality? The reality is, unless it's annulled, he's still married to her. What's the moving on about? What are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah. And in some dioceses, the programs that they have for people whose spouses have died, the widows and separated and divorced are all put together as if it's the same.
Oh my, yes.
So, you go through your grieving and so on. Okay, so
Right,
that's what you
and
meant.
we also want to have information, because part of the part of my website that will be for priests to have this information will say, how do you support an abandoned spouse? What does your vestibule look like? What do your homilies look like? Are they included? Are these people included? Is the programming for them that makes sense for how they're trying to live out their vow? Or is it only for people who are being funneled toward an annulment? What about the heroic people who know that they're still married and they're still living out their vows, and their spouse is perhaps civilly remarried to someone else? And there are certain burdens and there's certain type of suffering. And a priest can help people with spiritual things if he understands what exactly is going on. But if it just makes him uncomfortable, and wow, does this apparently make people uncomfortable, then he needs to know what would help and what would not help. And so he needs to understand the situation. So this questionnaire is supposed to give you an opportunity to say, this happened, this is how it impacted me, or tell me this was really helpful, or this is where I walk into my church and I feel, or into my parish, programming, or I read my newsletter and I just, this just gets me. This is the hard part. And how can we make that better? So what I would like to provide for priests is information that will help not just the priest, but definitely the priest be marriage affirming, but the entire parish be marriage affirming. So what is in the vestibule? What kind of programming is available for different types of people in different situations? And how about addressing the people who are heroically living out their vows when they've been abandoned? How about the people who go out and see the only thing in the vestibule is this is how you get an annulment brochure? How do we spiritually support people who are living these heroic lives and they're not really acknowledged, they're not really seen? I've never heard, I don't know if you have, I've never heard anything about people who are living out their vows. I've never heard that. I did have yesterday, I did have a priest who said, this is what happens when there's a divorce. There was a reading that related to this. This is what happens with a divorce, and this is what happens to the children. And he himself has that experience and was able to speak from it very clearly. And I thought, well, it's been many, 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 many years of going to Mass, and I've never heard that, but I just heard it.
No, it was, because we're talking on Monday, and yesterday's reading in our calendar was the Matthew 19. And
so
we're all like wondering, well, what's he going to say? Is he going to touch the topic at all, or is it the hot button they just avoid?
Right. So since I had that consolation and I knew I was going to be speaking with you today, I thought, have you all ever had that consolation where you've heard that? So I think it would be nice for not just the idea of a priest to understand this is what I can do in the priesthood, but there are questions in the questionnaire about what happens in confession. What kind of spiritual guidance did you have to get elsewhere, maybe? Because that idea was just not on anyone's radar screen. What happens in the vestibule? What happens in the programming? What happens in homilies? And is this acknowledged? And is it held up as a beautiful reality of what the sacrament of marriage is? So the questions are supposed to suss that out and give you an opportunity to say what happened and what would help and what does not help. And that would help me as I prepare things for priests who want to be marriage affirming. They're only going to go to my page if they want to be marriage affirming. So these are your people who you want to hopefully start to tip things a little bit in the other direction, where it's not let's help people move on, but let's first of all work on the marriages, and then second of all, if this is what happens to someone, let's support these people. Anyway, so I want to hear all of it. And that's why there's so many questions on the questionnaire.
Right, well, thanks. I figured you could explain it. It would be great to have you come on and explain it, because I'm going to fill it in. And some of the things you're talking about, what is helpful and what's not helpful. And like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And,
Right.
I think the culture is so anti-marriage right now in disposable society. So, even in a friend of mine, she talked to a priest about her situation, and the priest said he's never heard of this. He's never heard of somebody who considered themselves married after a divorce and intended to remain faithful, praying and hoping. So it's like, if the priests have never heard of it,
right.
Okay. I mean, that's the reality that we have right now. So I'm really grateful that you're willing to put in some time, and I'm going to ask all of my separated faithful that I can introduce to you to spend the time and fill in this questionnaire. And I'll put a link to it I'm going to put this on our website, both a PDF version and a Word version, whatever someone's comfortable with.
Right.
And it's all moving towards making parishes that are marriage affirming. Is what you said.
Exactly.
I like that.
Well, and as much as people are not going home to a spouse in their home, the standards, you're living out marriage. So marriage affirming of the actual reality of the vow, and unfortunately the suffering that happens when someone else is not living that out. So I hope that the idea of marriage affirming encompasses, and that you all understand that it encompasses the reality of that. And what we will do with the information, in case somebody's wondering, well, what exactly are you going to do with this? I am looking for ways to speak to priests about various things. One is how to handle situations that come in. One is, how do you handle the particular thing that you can do as a priest that other people can't do. You can speak about, what does the catechism say? You can speak about various things. And you can spiritually guide people, and all of that. That's all terrific. But also, how does this impact children? Because many of the people that are going to see this have children that have been impacted by it. And also, what if the priest comes from a broken family? And so as all of these things are, how do I set up a marriage affirming parish? How do I do this? The information that comes from this questionnaire will help me formulate what to include in the information that priests will be reading. And you don't want to read this as, wow, the priests are really dropping the ball here, we need to fix this. It's more that they are handling 1,000 things. This should be one of the most important. And so we want to give them as many resources as possible and ways to talk about it. So when we listen to people who are standards talking amongst themselves, they have a way of speaking about this, and that is important. So that kind of information and what I read, and I'll put it together and I'll quote when I can, and it gives you the opportunity to say, make me anonymous, or put my name on there, or yes, you can say I'm a female 47 from Cleveland, or you can do whatever you want, or you can just say completely anonymous. And then I can just use that information as needed to make all of these points more clear, so that your experience is part of what we're talking about.
Perfect. Great. I love it.
Good.
Okay. I think we've covered it good enough. Don't you?
Yes, I think so.
All right. Well, thanks. And I'm going to get the blog out hopefully today.
Okay, wonderful. I look forward to all the responses.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. So I'm ending the recording.
Okay.
Ending recording.